All right. Hello and welcome to the Media Play News Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Parkman.
And I'm co-host Charlie Sholey.
We are live and in person for the first time in months.
4 months. We haven't been in studio in 4 months. It is good to be back. I just showed Charles how the weeds have taken over my backyard. It is their backyard now.
When you leave home on any adventure, you come home. Is it the same home you left, or are you different? And the answer this time is that the home is different.
Yeah, it's like when Bilbo Baggins got back to Bag End at the end of his adventure in The Hobbit, and he found that his relatives had tried to sell all of his possessions.
All right, this week we're going to be talking about the Oscars. We're going to be covering a new show on Apple TV Plus, excuse me. You don't want them coming after us. And a new box set coming out for the John Wick franchise in anticipation of the fourth film coming out a week from today.
Yeah, as we're going to get into it, I cannot believe that franchise has made it to 4 movies.
So before we get into all that, though, we have an announcement. Voting is open for the 2023 Home Entertainment Media Play Awards. On our host site, Media Play News. Voting will remain open to the end of the month, where you can vote among your favorite categories like Best TV Series of the Year, Best On-Disc Release, and even stuff like Best Extras and Special Features. Last year's title of the year went to the Middle-earth Ultimate Collector's Edition, which is on point as I've been revisiting the Lord of the Rings films. This is for Charlie.
That's right. I didn't want to jump in and interject, but it's a lot funnier when you're saying, I loved watching that thing, but wait a second.
That's what happens if you don't proofread.
Yeah, I was watching the 3 Lord of the Rings extended movies, not the Hobbit ones, over the last couple weeks, just kind of on in the background as I'm moving stuff back into the house. And to the surprise of nobody, they're still amazing. Unlike the Hobbit movies, which are completely dead to me. They had one chance to knock it out of the park, and they struck out all 3 times. No, each movie was a strike, and they struck out at Battle of the Five Armies, the last one that they did. And really, I think it's because those movies betrayed the spirit of the original Hobbit book. It's a literal children's book in universe of Middle Earth. It's not something you're supposed to actually be watching and experiencing.
Yeah, but that's not fun. That's not going to make $1 billion, Charlie. What do you?
Yeah, I don't even know if those made $1 billion anyway.
Yeah, they probably came close to it. But who knows? Peter Jackson's back for more, baby. Someone probably handed him $1 billion to come back and do more Lord of the Rings.
I thought I just saw in the news somewhere recently he was going to do more movies. It could be the Amazon announcing they were going to do Lord of the Rings. No, it was Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers, because they have the film rights.
Yeah, so it might be Peter Jackson, might not be. Really, when you think about it, he hasn't done all that much aside from the Lord of the Rings stuff. He just did some really small movie in New Zealand that used like 5 billion gallons of fake blood. And then he did King Kong with Jack Black in it. And some kind of World War I documentary, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, it's we can have a separate discussion about Peter Jackson's directing career. But I will say that that first one, was it Dead Alive? Dead Alive is a solid little indie horror film that is over the top in ways that really work. And I think his King Kong is 90 minutes of good movie and then another 90 minutes of stuff we don't care about. So we'll get more into how movies are too long, but he was doing that in 2005. So
yeah, you may be asking yourself, why are we filling all this time with Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings? It's because neither of us have had a chance to watch anything, which is ironic considering I was just showing Charles how I had finally put a TV back on the wall in the house here. It's been like 6 months of having no TV. It was the 4 months of me not being here. preceded by the 2 months of my old TV just breaking, and then thinking, well, if I'm going to move out soon, why would I buy another TV and mount it and go through all that work only to have to take it away while construction is happening? So it's nice just having just like a big black square on the wall that I can't use.
So yeah, now expect, now I'm also settled from my move, so expect slightly more things to have been watched, including, hopefully, by next episode, The Last of Us, which just ended this past weekend. And I'm probably going to binge this week.
Yeah, I guess I finished that literally this morning as I was building a shoe cabinet. It was fine. I think just because I already knew how it was going to end, because I've played the games, I wasn't really kind of expecting anything. If you like the show up to this point, you'll like the end. Yeah,
it's the nature of adaptation. You're gonna see some stuff coming.
But yeah, let's get into
this week's inspiration.
Oh man, I forget how to do this in real life because now I actually have to look and emote.
We're sitting across the table from each other now. The dynamic is it's stale. We gotta freshen it back up. This week we are both consuming the Golden Road Brewing Mango Cart, a very solid fruited wheat ale.
Featured on the show before.
Yes, I think we both had this at either the same episode or different episodes, even when we were recording remote, because it's a good beer.
And for backup, we have more of my Bombardia Caribbean Dark Rum. We'll see if we get to that.
All right, first up, let's talk Oscars.
Yeah. So the biggest news of the weekend, or as some haters, yours truly included, would put it, a thing that happened over the weekend that nobody saw. And in a stat that I'm trying to recall just off the top of my head, which I will not be fact checking, as of 10 years ago, there were maybe 40 million people watching the Oscars. And from what I heard, there were only 10 million people watching it this weekend. Without any like slap type news. It's not really something people watch that much anymore. But I will say maybe this is just the type of thing where people will wait for the whole thing to air. They'll watch a bunch of highlights all over social media, and they'll end up getting hundreds of millions of views that way anyway.
Yeah, the Oscars, television watching has certainly changed in the intervening in those 10 years, which I'm sure is a big deal. I only knew the Oscars were happening this weekend because of a daily podcast that I listened to, talking about it coming up. And I did not realize it was on until I was scrolling through Instagram and saw people posting. No one I follow, just, Instagram pushes posts at you. Saw other posts about things happening at the Oscars, like Harrison Ford presenting Ke Huy Quan with his Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Ke Huy Quan, his first film role was in Raiders of the Lost Ark with Harrison Ford.
Or was it Temple of Doom?
Temple of Doom. That's the one.
Short Round? Yeah, that's right. I thought so.
I don't know the titles of those movies, I realized. It's just Indiana Jones, the first one. Indiana Jones, where that dude's heart gets ripped out, and Indiana Jones, Christianity is real. Again, because like in Raiders, Christianity is, Judaism is at least real.
Yeah. So some choice awards from the 2023 Oscars, or the 2022 Oscars held in 2023. Everything Everywhere All at Once swept with 7 total wins. No real surprise to me. Having watched it a year ago, like, it's kind of crazy how long it's been since it came out, and now that it's racking up all the wins, I'm kind of reminded, oh yeah, that was a really good movie. But a really good movie for people who don't watch unconventional movies all that much. But regardless, still really good. Brendan Fraser won Best Actor for The Whale, which I can't remember if I've talked about that movie on this show before, in that I haven't seen it yet. but just because the director is Darren Aronofsky, I feel like I have to, but it looks so boring.
And it did not review super well. His performance was lauded, but the film itself was...
Aronofsky's last two movies, too, haven't really hit either. They were Noah and Mother. So we'll see. It's going on my list along with The Northman and The Lighthouse. Remember when I was talking about those?
Oh, yeah, The Lighthouse. I got to watch that one.
Moving on, Top Gun Maverick won Best Sound, as well it should have.
It had to win something.
My absolute favorite shot from that movie is the first dogfight scene where Tom Cruise is going to go through drills with the younger fighter pilots, and he's giving his big motivational speech, basically just saying, I'm better than you are. You don't know how to fly a plane like I do, in front of a giant American flag. And then you kind of hear the sound of jet engines starting to build up as he's getting to the end of his speech and then talking to a couple of the pilots on the tarmac. And all of a sudden you just have this giant fist of sound punching you in the ears with jets blasting through the air on screen. That 1 5-second shot could have won Best Sound, I think. Avatar 2 won Best Visual Effects, obviously. And then Natu Natu from the movie RRR won Best Original Song.
Good for them.
Yeah. Have you seen this?
I haven't. I keep meaning to, but it's also longer than it needs to be. Note that we're going to keep it in this episode.
Yeah. What's cool is that this movie blew up in India just like regionally, in that it starred a bunch of very famous Indian actors, but not people that us in the US would really be familiar with. And then it slowly but surely gained this really strong following as it got Netflix distribution. I haven't finished it either because, for one, it is very long. And then second, it's the way that stories in Bollywood are told are distinctly different from mainstream US movies. They're very musical heavy, and I can't tell if the characterization is done badly or differently on purpose, in that like acting is taught a different way in India.
Yeah.
Something about how all the characters come across. It's hard to tell if like the bad guy white men are like bad actors on purpose, or if just everyone acts that way in India. Regardless, it's a very good movie when I eventually get around to finishing it.
When you have a spare 3 hours.
Yeah, no kidding. The last comment that I want to say, also kind of like jumping on the Oscars hate, is one thing that I heard a while ago is that the Oscars are really judging the best of from like such a recent time period is difficult to do without sort of like the long-term view. And it would be better to just have the Oscars only giving awards to movies from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So really Oscars 2023 should be Oscars of 2013. So let's wind the clock back and look to see what was winning 10 years ago. Argo, directed by Ben Affleck, wins Best Picture. Did you ever see Argo, Charles?
No.
Don't. It didn't know if it wanted to be a serious drama or a comedy.
Like, it's a nice line to walk if you don't know you're walking that way.
Best cinematography, Life of Pi. You remember Life of Pi?
I remember people talking about Life of Pi.
I don't know. I think that was the type of movie where everyone talked about how great it was, but nobody saw it. There was a kid and a CGI tiger on a boat. Oh my God, that tiger looked so real. The kid and the tiger.
And that studio went out of business before the film came out.
And then Django Unchained with Best Original Screenplay. Sure. Banger. That was a good movie.
Yeah. Jack O'Brien, formerly of Cracked, currently of the Daily Zeitgeist on iHeartMedia. He's long made the argument that same argument, like, Oscars shouldn't be for movies that came out this year. It's for movies that came out 5 years ago based on cultural impact.
Yeah. Where I got that 10 years ago thing from was definitely from Cracked. Whether or not it was from him, I don't remember, but directionally the same person.
Yeah. He was editor in chief over there. I don't know how much content he was writing actively, but so I pulled up the 2018 Oscars, and we got Shape of Water gets Best Picture, which again, sure.
I remember Guillermo del Toro's speech went so long they tried to play him off, and then he shouted down the music until he could finish his speech.
Yeah, that won over Get Out. It won over Dunkirk. Yeah, so he also won Best Director that year, which I'm willing to give him. Best Actor, Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill in Darkest Hour. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, the Best Actor in 2013 was Daniel Day-Lewis for Lincoln. And granted, he's a very good actor. Who saw Lincoln?
Exactly.
Who even remembers that president? Did he do anything of
I mean, a lot of it was because he had to. Yeah, I'm looking at these nominees. Do yourself a favor. Just look at a year of Oscars. Just look at the Oscars. You can find all of them on Wikipedia, but also on the Oscars website. Just go through each year and look at what won and what lost, and think about which had the bigger cultural impact. The Oscars are just the industry giving itself awards anyway. None of it matters. You may as well do it in a way that seems interesting.
That being said, if this distinguished podcast were to be, say, extended an invitation by the Academy to go to the 2024 Oscars.
Oh, we absolutely accept.
That'd be great. I hear they give really great gift bags.
Yeah, I'll do literally anything. But let's move on from Hollywood's biggest night to what's going on with the world, but not really. The Last of Us is over, but the post-apocalyptic storytelling continues. A show called The Silo is coming to Apple TV Plus, based on a trilogy of novels by Hugh Howey. Its synopsis from its marketing copy is: Silo is the story of the last 10,000 people on Earth, their mile-deep home protecting them from the toxic and deadly world outside. However, no one knows when or why the silo was built, and any who try to find out face fatal consequences. Rebecca Ferguson stars as Juliet, an engineer who seeks answers about a loved one's murder and tumbles into a mystery that goes far deeper than she could have ever imagined.
So I had the idea to do something a little bit different this week. We're going to do a live watch of the trailer, which I have queued up here, and we'll just give our initial impressions from that, because who knows of any Apple TV Plus shows in general? There's been a couple. There's the soccer one. There's the one with Adam Scott, and that's about it. The one with Jason Momoa, where he couldn't see anything.
Where everyone's blind, or he's just blind. I don't know. Shows come out on Apple TV Plus, and that's it. They just come out.
At the very least, they look consistently good. But my first read, just based on the description of this, is, spoiler alert, they're not actually the last 10,000 people on Earth.
Who would have guessed?
They're actually going to be set in the near future, or just modern day, or they're going to be some splinter society where something that happened in the distant past caused a few people to build the silo and go and live in that as some kind of social experiment. We'll see if I'm proven wrong in the next 30 seconds. Okay, so they did not show that nobody was outside the silo, which makes me even more sure that my prediction is going to come out to be true, because there are countless examples of a small society that's cut off from the rest of the definitely real greater society in fiction. There's stuff like M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, where it appears like it's set in Amish times, but really it takes place in present day. There's The Island, the Michael Bay masterpiece, where a bunch of people are living in some sort of containment and told that the world has been ravaged by a pandemic, but they can win a chance in a lottery to get spirited away to an island paradise that is actually them just having their organs harvested because everybody's a clone of a rich person who is paying to have a clone of themselves grown. And it's surprisingly dark.
Yeah, it's a heavy twist. It's a bad twist, but it is also like a very dark shift from what that film was presented as.
Yeah. And, you know,
also like 10 Cloverfield Lane is basically that.
Yeah. If you think about kind of like a meta read on this, it's a trilogy of books. Something's got to happen with the main character, who I imagine is going to be Rebecca Ferguson the whole time, eventually getting out and discovers, oh my God, I've been lied to the whole time. But it looks pretty cool. It's a lot more sci-fi-y than Last of Us was.
Yeah.
So I'll give it a watch when it comes out.
It looks like it could be interesting. I did just want to shout out a thing that I've noticed a lot of these, not specifically Apple TV Plus, but a lot of these premium streaming trailers tend to do, which is in the first couple shots of this trailer, you see Common, actor and rapper, and Rashida Jones. I was like, oh, cool. They're in this. I'm on Silo's IMDb. Common is in 3 of the 10 episodes, and Rashida Jones is in 1. And I'm trying to think of Common is in 2 episodes. I was trying to think of other examples of this where like the famous person that you know is not the star, but they're like featured in the trailer. They're like, oh, well, this is just, they're in and out. They're basically a cameo.
Hey, you gotta get the eyeballs somehow. And so the more people you can have in your show that'll make audience goers point and go, oh, it's that guy.
Yeah, I guess if you only got 90 seconds, you gotta draw people in as much as possible.
Yeah, which that really makes me respect movies and games, for my next example, a lot more when they feature some kind of celebrity cameo and they're in the entire thing.
Yeah.
So the game Cyberpunk 2077, which had Keanu Reeves, queuing up for our next segue, they had him pretty heavily featured in the promos for that game. And he was in pretty much the entire game, too, as like a supporting, character who just followed you throughout the whole thing.
They really committed.
It's too bad that game was a broken mess as of, when I played it like a year ago.
Maybe it'll have what was another game? No Man's Sky situation where you revisit it 2 years later and it's like, oh, this game is actually what they told us it was going to be.
Yeah.
They just didn't have time.
They're actually developing DLC for it, which has Idris Elba as what looks to be the bad guy. So that could be pretty cool.
It's just going to be his character from Hobbs and Shaw.
You done with Silo?
Oh, I had a thing that I was thinking about, like, given the premise, or 2 things I was thinking about giving the premise, where, there's the idea that no one knows, like, who built the silo and why they're there. Reminded me of I believe it's a series 3 Doctor Who episode where the Doctor and his then companion, Martha Jones, go to this planet where there's these 2 warring factions and they don't know how long they've been fighting or like what the reason they're fighting is.
It's a real star-bellied Sneetches situation.
Yeah. And it turns out they've just been cloning people to bolster their numbers on both sides, but the clones are like they're accelerated growth, so they just like a battle trained adult comes out but doesn't have any like additional memories that aren't related to fighting, and spoilers for this episode, they came out 20 years ago. But they find out that they've only been there for 2 weeks. And the thing they're fighting over is the means to terraform the planet they're on. They're like in a bunker that they were working on. Some disagreement happened and it escalated into this conflict that no one is alive to remember. And that reminded me of that. And also, because I'm a biology nerd, I was like, there's 10,000 people in this silo. They don't know how long they've been there. What's the threshold for, avoiding inbreeding? And it turns out, according to this article that I quickly Googled before we started the trailer on Britannica.com, that the threshold now is 500 people, which is way lower than I expected. Obviously, that's like that's doing it on purpose, like avoiding excessive inbreeding. But apparently 500 people is all it takes to not make things all weird right away for the sake of repopulation. So 10,000 is plenty. So I retract the argument I was going to make against 10,000 people.
But you know what isn't plenty? Again, taking it back to Keanu Reeves and his seminal work, The Matrix Reloaded. He's presented with a choice. He could try and save Trinity, or he could upload himself to the source and save Zion by taking, if I remember right, only about 10 males from the Matrix and 30 females and using them to repopulate Zion.
Yeah, well below the threshold.
It's a good thing that Reloaded and Revolutions are not good movies already, because that just added a whole extra piece of subtext to them. But speaking of Keanu Reeves, thanks for bringing him up. There's this box set of John Wick chapters 1 through 3 that's coming out. And what's special about this is apparently there's a set of branded playing cards featured in the trailer for John Wick 4. This box set has your very own copy of John Wick branded playing cards. And I'm not going to lie, they do look kind of cool. Because if these movies are nothing else, they are very much style over substance.
They're definitely cool to look at. I do like the idea of buying all the movies up to the current point in a franchise and getting a discount on the upcoming one. It's very similar to the Spider-Man bundle I bought on Vudu, like a year and a half ago now, where it was the Sam Raimi films, the Mark Webb Amazing Spider-Man films, as well as the 2 preceding Tom Holland, John Watts films, and also included that's exactly like this, a discounted Spider-Man No Way Home once it eventually released digitally as well. So it's definitely a cool idea. It's a solid incentive, especially for franchises that aren't over. It does feel kind of weird when it's like a franchise that could still continue.
I actually think that John Wick Chapter 5 is planned. But the reason we're bringing this up is this box set of the first 3 movies includes a credit for the next movie, which comes out the 24th of this month. And as we were talking about before we started recording, clocks in at nearly 3 hours long. So that's going to be a home viewing for me, sir. Those movies are not meant to be that long.
Yeah, we were having that conversation, before we started recording. And so I decided to look at the runtimes of each of the John Wick films. So starting with the first John Wick. The first John Wick is on 101 minutes, just over an hour and a half. It's in, you got the setup, stuff happens, and you're out.
Have you ever thought about, and this is something I've seen online too, I'm stealing this as well from another cracked person. Can you imagine what the news headlines would be if the plot of John Wick happened in real life? Maniac goes on killing spree in New York City, slaughters 75 men with perfectly aimed gunshots to the head.
It is one man going on a brutal killing spree in a major populated area, and then he does it 3 more times. Which, like, there's no way that this doesn't also, like, unveil, like, lift the veil on this secret organization of assassins, because they're doing it in public at, like, a concert and, like, in a library. And just on the street, like in a mall at one point, John Wick and Common are just shooting at each other with silenced pistols in a mall. But, yeah, John Wick 2, 122 minutes. 11 minutes longer. I mean, with credits, not too much longer.
It's manageable.
There's a little bit more to like. The set pieces are bigger, so obviously there's going to be a couple more things going on.
Yeah, if you look at like the life cycle of a franchise, that's where the makers were like, oh, we actually have something here. Okay, we have a couple more ideas we can expand on that we didn't have the room for in the first one.
Yeah,
budget's a little bit bigger. Let's kick it up a little bit.
Away with.
And then the third movie comes.
Third movie is an additional 10 minutes longer at 131 minutes. So we've reached 2 hours. What are we doing? I enjoyed John Wick Chapter 3 - Parabellum. It's an enjoyable film. You feel it though. You feel.
Yeah, that's where it lost me, because the story in the series, or the lore, if you want to call it that, is way better as just like a vague concept. And then when they start trying to over explain everything, you think this is really bad.
Yeah.
There's no way that this holds together in like a logical way. Like a special kind of like distribution of hotels with special rules all over the world, and they transact with golden coins is pretty cool. And you just say that's how this League of Assassins operates.
It's a very cool idea to introduce in the first one, because like we're introduced to it as the audience who knows nothing, but everyone in the context of the film knows exactly what's happening, and they all just accept it. So you just accept it. The more you explain to that, though, the less cool it is. But John Wick Chapter 4. Which has no additional subtitle.
It should be No More.
Well,
I think it would work on like, a sarcastic level and I'm John Wick and I'm cool. No more of this. John Wick 4, no more. In theaters, March 24th.
Yeah, especially couldn't call it No More because they're definitely making a 5th one. In fact, they were planning on shooting them back to back. But John Wick Chapter 4 clocks in at 169 minutes. It is over half an hour longer than the last one. And I don't know if, as much fun as these movies are, I don't know if they hold up for almost 3 hours.
They don't. You don't have to wonder at all.
I don't know if it's that kind of franchise. But, and we're going to get it. It's happening. And like I said, these movies are fun. They are like probably like the most interesting new IP in the action movie space that we've gotten in a long time. And I want more things like this to happen, but I don't want there to be 10 John Wick movies also. We need to find that middle ground of this is a cool new franchise, and this is a cool new idea that we're going to do, and we're going to milk this until we can't get anything out of it anymore. But we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. I will probably see it in theaters.
You're a bold one. Then again, I did see Avatar 2 twice in theaters, so I really can't say anything at all.
My partner's about to go out of town again. She's not into these movies. That's a Sunday morning activity for me, is just to go see a movie that's too long, but at 10 a.m. so no one else is in the theater and I can drink. It's a good time.
Yeah, you need a lot of inspiration for these movies now.
Just to get through them, but then it backfires and you're like, well, I've had half a flask of whiskey. I have to go to the bathroom, but I've never seen this film before. So when do you go? Because I'm not going to see it a second time. My movie going etiquette aside, that's going to wrap this up for this week. Don't forget to vote for the Media Play News Home Entertainment Awards.
Yeah, I made sure to interject that at the very beginning of wrapping up, because usually when I'm listening to podcasts, as soon as they launch into their repeated sign-off message, I'm like, all right, so let me just skip to the end so I can clear that download from my podcast queue.
And if you do that with us, you're missing the outtakes that I usually put at the end of these episodes, so don't do that. Listen to the whole thing. But you can find links to that and these articles in the show notes and at MediaPlayNews.com. You can subscribe to the site's mailing list using the subscription link in the notes. You can email us directly at MediaPlayNewsPodcast@gmail.com to have your comment featured on the show, or find us on our Twitter account at PodcastMPN. If you like the show, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. We really appreciate it. I'm Charles Parkman.
I'm Charlie Sholey.
And we will see you next week.